Welcome to the Choose FI Radio Podcast, episode 13, The Unfair FI Advantage of Being a Teacher.
You're listening to Choose FI Radio. The blueprint for financial independence lives here. If you're looking to unlock the secrets to financial independence and early retirement, you're in the right place. Stay tuned and join a community of like-minded people who are getting off the hamster wheel and taking control of their lives in the pursuit of financial independence. Choose FI, your home for financial independence online.
So I'm back in the studio today with Brad, and today we also have with us Millionaire Educator. This guy is just killing it, and he's doing something that no one else is talking about, and every single teacher, firefighter, police officer, and other state employee should be imitating this guy because he has got something that nobody else is discussing. And specifically, I'm talking about his free money article that he posts every single year. I heard him 8 months ago on a Mad Scientist podcast, and he literally blew my mind. And I haven't heard anybody else talk about tax optimization the way that he talks about it. And if you follow his advice, you can be a teacher, firefighter, police officer. And there's like zero chance that you can't retire a millionaire if you start implementing just a few of the principles that he goes over. And we're going to start talking about those today. So I'm very excited to have him here. Welcome, Ed. Welcome to the studio.
Hey, great. Thanks for having me.
I think you are just recently back from Cancun. Am I right about that?
Yeah, we just spent 2 months in Mexico, Cancun, and a small town north of Mérida, Mexico called Progreso. And we're visiting family. We plan on going back in a few months.
So all teachers should be thinking about going to Cancun because that is the best place to teach.
Oh, not to teach. No, just to enjoy life.
Oh, you know? Okay. All right.
Yeah, I'm not teaching in Cancun. No, that's for fun.
Very cool. Well, why don't we start just by talking just a little bit about your journey, specifically kind of how you got where you are today.
Yeah, I'm from Georgia and from a family of 5 and a basketball family. So I always tell people back in those days, there was no internet or cable TV, so everyone gravitated towards sports, and as a typical family back then, and was a pretty good student in high school, and so that resulted in a basketball scholarship. And I went off to school and played D1 basketball, and that was pretty much my identity for many years. I'd have to say I kind of was not a good student undergrad, so I tell everyone that just because it seems that a lot of people in the fire space are great students and engineers.
Lots of software engineers out there. Yeah.
Yeah, so you don't have to be one of those people. You can have a checkered past or a really bad transcript, and you can make everything work out fine. After college, I played basketball in Argentina and El Salvador, and
wow.
I got a taste for living abroad, and I learned some Spanish. And from there, I learned more Spanish and traveled more, to Brazil and all through Central America, and went to language school. And yeah, it was a lot of fun and a lot of personal growth, and took me down a different path. And from that, a strange twist of fate, I became a Spanish teacher, something I never planned on in my life. I could barely pass Spanish in college.
That's where I'm at. I probably would not pass Spanish. Took it for several years, but not gifted for it.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I was the flow killer in class. I was, everyone's answer, and they'd come to me and like silence, and everyone feel embarrassed for me. But somehow I managed to get C's and get the heck out of that and get that requirement done. But I became a Spanish teacher. And when I first started about in 92 in the state of Georgia, I think I made $18,000 my first year. I mean, I realized there were no long-term prospects in teaching, financially speaking. So I did what most people do. When you don't know what to do with your life, I went to grad school. And I did an MBA out in Laredo, Texas. And I did at the same time, and through a summer program in Southern Miss in Hattiesburg, I did a master's, like a double emphasis in Spanish and TESOL education, to teach ESL, English as a second language. So my fiance and I went out and did this graduate study in Texas, and consequently we built up $45,000 in debt in a student loan. And prior to that, I never had any debt. So like a lot of people, you do it because you're told it's a great investment, and you graduate and you've got your piece of paper, and now you've got to go service debt.
And how old were you with the now that you have the $45,000 debt? At what age are you starting to service this debt?
let's see, let me think this through. 33.
All right, so the age of 33, your net worth is negative 45K.
Mine was negative 20. My wife's was negative 25. Yeah. So,
Okay.
yes. Yeah.
Because as a couple, you're a long way from millionaires. You don't have a silver spoon.
A long way. I mean, I think back to, I graduated at 22 to 33. I mean, what happened during those 11 years? They're the lost years financially.
And I just want to point that out to our audience. We do have people that we'll be talking to that have just done it right. Everything from the age of 18 to 30, they just nailed it and they're doing great. And that's fantastic. But you don't have to figure out your 20s. You know, if you're listening to this and you're 35 years old, Millionaire Educator starting out at 33 with a net worth between him and a spouse of negative 45. And, you know, there is room for you to learn these skills that we're going to be talking about today and then move forward. So I think this is very cool.
Yeah. Dealing with $45,000 of debt, I saw a job offering in Saudi Arabia. And so I went there and I ESL for about 5.5 years when I came back after 9/11. But what I was able to do there is, one, pay off the debt. And I was very aggressive in my debt payment. I think Mr. Money Mustache describes debt as what your hair's on fire or it's a flashing red emergency. That's the way I viewed it. I was sending whole paychecks in. I would take a check and squeeze it as long as I could for living expenses. And I would send. And so I got mine done and then I got my wife's done.
How many years was that to pay that off?
I look back, I think it took about 2 years to get that done.
Okay.
You know, I still was probably spending too much money. I wasn't very frugal at the time. It wasn't a worst case scenario, but I could have done it better in hindsight. But once that was paid off, I remember returning to the States. I had a net worth of roughly $100 or maybe $110,000. So, I mean, going from negative 45,000 to up 110. That was an amazing feeling. And I wanted to mention another thing. In Saudi Arabia, there's not a lot to do, so you end up reading a lot. And I came across 2 books there that kind of changed my life in a sense. I came across Bogle's, on mutual funds.
Yep.
And that's where I understood the importance of low-cost investing and also passive investing. And it became very clear to me what I needed to do with my money at that point. And then I also came across a book, Paul Terhorst, Cashing In on the American Dream, How to Retire at 35. And the guy's an accountant, a CPA, and he retired at 35 and he explained how he did it. And that really gave me a vision. Those 2 books really got me thinking on what I needed to do. You got to keep in mind, this would have been around 1996, 7. There was no such concept as FIRE. So we were kind of figuring out on our own. I was wanting to have enough money to go live in Mexico and Brazil and have a good time. This got me on the path to do that. So let's see. After Saudi Arabia, come back to the United States, 2002, my wife and I took teaching jobs in a small town, LaGrange, Georgia. Initially, our idea was to her certified as a teacher so that we could go teach on the international school circuit. And 1 year led to 7 years there, and we ended up teaching in public school in Georgia. And that's where I learned about investing as a teacher in the various teacher-specific products or retirement plans. And these retirement plans, namely the 403B and 457 plans, not only teachers have these, but also other people that work in the public sector like policemen, firemen, government employees. These are typical plans that most state employees will have access to.
That's awesome. So that is a specific audience. You know, we try to figure out who is each one of these episodes that we're trying to do helping. So right now, what we have, Millionaire Educator, he is going to basically go from a net worth in the negatives in his 30s to now has reached it as a millionaire. And specifically, I think the information we're about to uncover would be very helpful for all state employees. So firefighters, police officers, teachers. That is a massive segment. In fact, if I think about my friends back home, I have probably 15 friends from back home, and of those, 10 of them, that applies to that specific group of people. So that is a large segment, and there is no reason that what you're doing couldn't be replicated, right?
Yeah, it's very formulaic, I think. The way I went about it is I studied up on the 403Bs thanks to a site, 403B Wise. A guy named Dan Otter puts that out there. Everyone should take a look at that. And I learned that teachers essentially have 2 retirement plans, right? And I was like, wow, you know, and you can fully fund both of them. So that's almost an unfair financial advantage. You don't hear that said about teachers very often, right?
Yeah, they've got it made.
And what is fully funding? What's the definition of fully funding for those 2 accounts?
Yeah, for 2017, if you're under 50 years old, you can do $18,000 in each account.
Wow.
So you could you could put $36,000 back, comes right off your taxes, and it goes to your side of the ledger. It's your money for your retirement. And it also reduces I think I just said that, reduces your taxes. So you get kind of the best of both worlds. I started in a 403B, and my wife and I, the first year we did, I think the max in 2002 was $12,000. And we did our IRAs, and we ended up saving $30,000. And since that 2002, we've done a lot more than that every year. I mean, we've gone as high as $106,000 in a year.
That is incredible.
On our savings. But I mean, the fact that, my wife's a teacher and I'm a teacher, we have not 2 401ks, we have 4. We have 2 IRAs. We have a health savings account. Those would be the main ones. But 2002, we had roughly a net worth of 110. And in the next 7 years, we were using the 403B and the 457 a little. And in retrospect, that was a mistake on my part. That's probably my biggest investment mistake. I didn't understand how useful the 457 could have been. I should have been maxing out that account too. But anyway, we got to 2007. I was sitting on a net worth, I believe, roughly $400,000. And that's when I decided, I didn't feel like our plan, I thought, even though our plan was good, here's a guy complaining about saving, let's say, $300,000 in 7 years. It could have been a lot better, believe it or not. We were looking to change of scenery. We were kind of burnt out at our jobs. And 2009 was a big year for us because that's the year we took a job in South Georgia in a small county, Eccles County. And we did the next phase of our retirement plan. One of the things that we did learn about 403B investing is that it's not cost efficient. They're very high fees. You can have over 200 basis point products as a teacher. Mm-hmm. So as we built up this money from 2002 to 2009, I had money basically sitting in a fixed account, a cash position, because the platform was too expensive to really invest in, okay? So we had a reason to want to leave our job so we could move our money.
Okay.
Yeah, in a rollover form. So 2009, we get to this new job.
And real quick, I think, and I don't know if you wrote this article or just used it inside of another article, but I think you mentioned exactly what you're talking about, the power of quitting, because when you quit a job, it does give you a single opportunity to use a technique that you can't do when you're just in the job. Am I right about that?
Yes, correct. It's called the separation of service clause, which means, you quit your job, you can move your money. And what you want to do when you move your money is obviously take it to a better investment platform, which for me and probably you guys is going to be Vanguard because of their low cost investments. And by the way, if you know of a better platform than Vanguard, please tell me.
I got nothing. We're big fans of Vanguard as well. So how much are we talking about that you had in this 403B that you got moved over?
Oh, let's see. I want to say it was about 150 or 180. I don't really remember how much. The 457 money I left there because that was going to be used later for something else. Okay. So I needed to move 150, let's say $150,000, and to get it into my Vanguard IRA rollover account. Okay. So at the new job, I had $90,000 from 457 plans, and the 457 is a very special account. Make a note, everyone. It does not have the normal 10% penalty for pre-59.5 withdrawals. Yeah. So I could basically use that $90,000 to fund living expenses. And it worked out. We basically took $30,000 from it over 3 years. And what that allowed me to do at my new job was max out my 457, my 403B, IRAs, and my last year even did a health savings account, and I did ed savings account for my son. In 3, let me make sure I got this number right, Matt. Yeah, in 3 years, we saved $263,000.
Oh my goodness!
And your tax liability must have been virtually zero, if not zero.
I mean, it was low. Yeah, I mean, I did have some of the remains of my paycheck, and I had that $30,000 coming in as income. I wasn't super frugal back then. I could have done that better. Once again, you don't have to do it perfectly.
Right.
You just want to get big wins.
And I think one of the things you're mentioning that we probably need to dive into is you talk about what side of the ledger is it going on. That is really cool because you wouldn't be able to save $100,000 in a taxable account, or you wouldn't be able to put it in there with post-tax dollars. You're leveraging another tool in order to get that full quantity in there.
Yeah, I had a bucket of money that I could use for current expenses. And so that allowed me to, when I had my new job, to go fill all those buckets to the max. And I still remember the people in the human resources office and even the superintendent, he's like, "What are you doing?" Because he had to sign off on it. And I would get checks for 2 cents.
So all this is just going in pre-tax. So the government's not getting any, the state's not getting any. You're not paying anything towards some of the other taxes that the rest of us are paying. You're just throwing all of it into pre-tax buckets.
Yeah, and that job was particularly sweet because that district had no social security.
Oh, wow.
The only thing I was paying was Medicare. And so not only was I not paying into Social Security, they had a retirement plan in lieu of Social Security where I was getting 6%. Okay.
Wow.
So, and that worked out to be $20,000, that $263,000 I mentioned, that's $20,000 that was in that other plan. So it was incredible. It was a great 3 years, and it was actually an enjoyable job, good kids, nice people. It was very rural. Super rural, 800 kids in the whole district, K through 12.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like working at a private school. But at that point, I guess it got to be 2012. My wife and I decided we wanted to take a break. We've been teaching at that point 10 years straight. And that's a long time to keep doing a job. And I just want a break. So we took a break, and that break lasted the summer because we made a mistake and took jobs back in our old school in LaGrange. They hired us back. I promptly quit after 2 weeks. I realized I was
You're 10 years into this, and now you've racked up close to $500,000. And unfortunately, how many people I know that are in these same jobs and have the same opportunities that are just paycheck to paycheck, and just try to figure out what is it that you're doing differently. And I think it's cool, some of the things that you're sharing with us today.
Yeah, well, that first phase in LaGrange, that was great. From say 100 to 400. That second phase, we went from 400 to about, I think it was 700, maybe even 750. Well, we spent a year in LaGrange, and then we took a year off at that point, and we didn't work at all. And we went and traveled and went to Cancun and just visited friends and slept in and enjoyed ourselves. But 2014, we decided, look, the blog says Millionaire Educator. Let's push through that mythical 7-figure number. And we took the next job, which would be phase 3. And we went to Douglas, Georgia, and taught in a high school there. And in those 2 years, we saved $238,000.
Wow.
Yeah, so
I have trouble even comprehending being able to save that much money in such a short period of time. And I'm sure I'm not alone. I'm sure many people have trouble comprehending how to go about how to even start that. But it sounds like you're making it pretty simple.
Well, and see, the key is, this is where the teacher advantage comes in.
I love that, the teacher advantage.
Yeah, and public service employee advantage. If you have a 403B and a 457, and let's say you have some money to live on, you can just start filling those accounts to the brim. And that's what we realized. That was like, wow, if we have money to live on, we can go all in all the time. So 2014, for example, we saved roughly $42,000 from August through December.
Wow.
Because we didn't take any checks. And then the next year, we go to the human resource office again, and we max them out again.
I'm just imagining the person in human resources knowing you're about to come in, and
I'm assuming you're the only one in the district getting
no,
7 cents.
There's
check,
a
right?
line of people, I'm sure, trying to send all their checks to pre-tax buckets.
Oh, yeah, and so we do that. My wife and I go in there and do it, and they're like, "Wow, you sure you want that?" I said, "Yeah, we know what we're doing." And then in 2016, our checks for 2016 were a combined $2 and $8. It was 26 cents a month is what we netted together, my wife and I.
That is unbelievable. So what are you guys living off of?
Oh, that's a good question. Let's see. In that phase 2 in South Georgia, we had that $90,000 from the 457. And in phase 3, we had a couple things going on there. First, we were taking 72T distributions from our big rollover IRAs. And that was roughly, a little over $18,000 a year coming in.
Let me break that up in two sections. So in the first one, the 90,000, is that a 3-year period that you're dropping that? So
yeah, we used all that money in 3 years.
So $30,000 a year was essentially covering your cost of living?
Correct.
Okay. And because you're drawing it out and that's all you're living off of and you don't have to pay a 10% tax, are you paying a federal tax on that at your federal tax rate based on how much you draw out?
Yeah, that comes in as regular income, so it's subject to federal income tax.
So if you're living off of, this will go into you have an article we're going to talk about, but basically because you're in a low marginal tax bracket, when you're drawing that out, you're really not paying much on that even then, right? Very little, I would think.
Correct. I mean, you stay in the 10% tax bracket if you kind of do some tax planning and maybe, worst case scenario, you go a little bit into the 15% tax bracket. So, and bear in mind that during those 3 years, we also had some of our paycheck left.
Okay.
Some of it was coming in, so we had that even to live off of. In the phase 2, we had that, like I said, the 72T distributions of $18,000.
Can you give us an overview of how the 72T works?
Yeah, this is, I would say this is kind of graduate school level fire concept. And the reason I say that is because if you do the calculation wrong, apparently there are retroactive fees that go back to the first withdrawal, and so you wouldn't want to pay a big penalty. But at any rate, I felt comfortable enough making the calculation after. Well, let me talk about what the calculation is. Basically, you're turning your IRA you're annuitizing it. You're taking out the same amount of money per year based on your life expectancy, and you have to take those withdrawals for at least 5 years or to your 59 and a half, whatever is longer. So in my case, I started at age 50, and I'll be taking these withdrawals out until I'm 59 and a half. But it's the kind of thing most people, you might want to let an accountant or a CPA make that calculation for you. But what it'll allow you to do is access your IRA money without paying a penalty, the 10% penalty for getting into your funds early. And I believe it was like $550,000 in these IRAs between us. And, that money just sits there and you can't do anything with it. Well, this allowed us to set up a stream of income from and use it for our expenses. So that's what we lived off of since 2013. 2015, November, I sold my house. And so I came into some cash there, and I used that as, like, for example, you guys know the concept of front loading.
Yes, but actually this is perfect because we have not introduced it to our audience yet.
Oh, okay. Well, front loading just means that when you have an opportunity to fund something, for example, an IRA, a health savings account, and you're going to earn income that year, you got the money sitting there, you put it in there. So 2016, I front loaded all the accounts I could. I did the Ed savings account, health savings account, and I think that was it actually. But I was able to put in $7,000 right off the bat.
And essentially, in that particular situation, you're saying, all right, yeah, I'm not dollar cost averaging, but I'm taking advantage of the fact that I have a bunch of time, and I think that the time will end up working to my advantage more than I would get from the benefit of dollar cost averaging it over the next 12 months. That's essentially front loading.
Well, yes, but the other thing about that to me is, let's face it, when you got money in your pocket.
Oh, it's going to burn a hole.
Yeah, so I don't like to have big cash positions sitting around. If I got somewhere I can put it, that's going to come off my taxes. And once again, on my side of the ledger, I'm going to put it there. And what I was doing also with human resources, like zeroing out my paychecks, that's another form of front loading. Mm-hmm. And I'm just trying to think what the 72T and the remains of my house sale, which was about $40,000. And, even some of that, I think I used to fund an IRA. And
when you say IRA, you're referring to your 403B. That's what we're...
No. Actually, I had an IRA account that had some more money I could put in there, and I used that. I think I'm talking about for year 2015. It gets kind of... I can't remember all the details.
No, it's okay. But
so many different accounts.
For your 72T distributions, the ones that you're living off of now, is that coming from your 403B? Or is that from another account?
Or the rollover, you said?
Yeah, exactly. It's my rollover account. And so, over the years, as I put my traditional IRA money in there, and then I rolled in my 403B money to there. And so it served as kind of like a pot of money where I would just funnel everything, and they got really big.
That totally makes sense. So you had this massive amount in your 403B that you accumulated when you quit your job and moved to a different place. You rolled that into the IRA, and then you used your IRA to do the 72T, and that's what you're using to fund the basis of your expenses.
Yeah, I just realized now I need to make a flow chart.
I love flow charts.
I have to learn how to make one. But So that's what we've been living off of, and it's not a well. Let me say where I am now. I still have my 72T, obviously the 18,000 a year, and I'm sitting on about. I mean, I just wrote an article. I'm trying to recall the number. I believe it's $90,000 again in 457 money. Okay, so I can pull that money out strategically, and to live off of. And the way I pull that money, this will go into my free money article.
Yep.
Like most people, I like to have some control over how much tax I pay. Most people, they just bring their income in and then they don't save anything in their tax advantage accounts, retirement accounts. And at the end of the year, they always complain about, it's not fair. I just want to just wring people by the neck because it's like you control your tax rate.
And what I think is so interesting about the way you've done it, and it makes total sense to me now, what you're doing that very few other people do that are not in our space is you actually are deciding how much you want your cost of living to be. You have a set number, that's how, and you know it. It doesn't deviate too much from that. And then from there, instead of just generating your income as a paycheck, all your income goes to accounts that are on your side of the ledger. And what I mean by that for our audience, pre-tax. So he doesn't pay any taxes. It goes into all of these pre-tax. And then based on your tax strategy, you then pull it out on an as needed basis or with a strategy that gives it back to you at the lowest tax bracket possible. Am I more or less on the same page here?
Yeah, that is correct. And the formula is pretty easy. All I'm doing is I'm taking three elements. I take the standard deduction, based on my situation, we're a family of three, and then that yields three personal exemptions, and I have a child who's almost 11, so he qualifies for the child tax credit. So when you add those up, and I'm looking here at my numbers for 2017, the standard deduction is $12,700. Three personal exemptions is $12,150, and then the child tax credit is equivalent of $10,000 extra dollars. So I can earn $34,850 and owe no tax in 2017.
So from a strategy perspective, when you're looking at your cost of living, and let's say you're trying to achieve all these other goals, you're thinking, man, if I could keep my cost of living for everything below 34 grand, that would be great.
Yes, and I owe nothing for federal income tax at that level.
We need to stress that that's $0 in federal tax. So what you just said about wringing people's necks, that is especially important here. People just complain about paying too much in tax, but you're saying you can literally cut it to zero just by being smart.
And if you and your spouse are making 80 to 100,000 and you're able to figure out how to keep your cost of living below 34,000, which by the way is pretty simple if you don't have debt and you don't have car payments. That means you can put 60 grand on your side of the ledger. And wow, that is powerful. I mean, take a couple of years of that. When you combine compound interest, you're just crushing it.
Yeah, I mean, some days I've been doing this for years and I look at the numbers and I'm just like, it's shocking still. And there's another component to that. In our case, we still have some of the 10% tax bracket left. So the next step I do is I figure out how much money I can earn at only the 10% rate. And in my case, that's another $8,650, $8,650. So I can really take this year $43,500 and I will have an effective tax rate of 1.99%, 2%. And so I'll owe $865 in federal income tax. Okay, $43,500 and I owe $865.
In contrast, currently, I think my federal tax bill was like $26,000, this year.
Whoa.
Yeah.
You're playing a different level.
Well, no, and it's because, I got debt. I got a significant amount of debt that I had to pay off, and you got to pay debt off with post-tax dollars. So if you can get past that point, get out of that phase and into the phase that Ed is in, gosh, I would get such a big smile on my face if I could get away with paying the federal government $800. I mean, I would be giddy. It would be amazing.
Well, that's one of my 4 fire concepts is debt avoidance, because debt is paid with after-tax dollars. And when you have to take your money, it screws up the whole plan.
It does.
And yeah, so I feel for you on that. So,
Well, I want to be more like you. I'm getting close. Everything that was the plan. I had to get through that phase. So now I'm going to be more like Ed.
oh yeah, more power to you, because it's very powerful when you start, saving six figures a year. It's very liberating. I heard you guys talking on one of your podcasts about just having options, and you have time, and you can sleep in, you take weekend trips. It's incredible.
And the thing is, you're doing all that. I mean, from what I understand, you're just 3 or 4 years farther down that path. And one thing that you do that probably a lot of other people may not feel that they can do or are going to do, but when you find someone that really does it, it obviously makes a cool story, is this idea of geo arbitrage. You are perfectly willing just to pick it up and move somewhere else and start. And it's really cool. It's really cool.
Well, and it fits into the plan in this sense that if you're in a high cost state or part of a state, you can probably go somewhere else. Like, for example, a small town. These last 2 towns I taught in, my rent was $750. My last job, I paid $500 for a 2-bedroom, 1.5 bath apartment. And it was a nice living arrangement. We had a pool. I had no yard work, but I totaled up my expenses. I was spending about $1,500 to $2,000 a month at the most.
Wow.
Yeah. And that's living in America. And I can replicate that in Mexico.
These towns are going to get upset with us because we keep saying their names, and they got a flood of people that aren't paying any taxes moving there. LaGrange, we're coming for you. Eccles, we're coming for you.
Well, and that's the thing, it's a lot of they look at these towns and say, "Oh, that's a podunk town. I wouldn't want to go live there." They got all the retirement plans you need. They have nice people, low cost of living. It might be, a little piece of paradise for you, especially financially. So geo arbitrage, a lot of people, they know that term from Tim Ferriss, and they're thinking about going to some low cost country. Yeah, you can do it that way. You can do it within your own county. And you should, keep that in mind. If you have to jump jobs to get a better lifestyle arrangement, by all means do it, because not only will it increase your savings possibly, it'll also give you an avenue to move your money to a better investment option. For example, when I left those jobs, I knew where I was going to be sending money to Vanguard, and I did.
Yeah, that's really cool. Hey, if you don't mind, I want to just go back real quick to the 457. So being able to pull out penalty free at any age, that's any 457? Is that just like the definition of how the 457 withdrawal rules work?
Yes, my knowledge is that the 457, it's often referred to as a deferred compensation plan. For whatever reason, it's the only one that does not have that pre-59.5 T. Now, you can roll it over to an IRA if you want, and I have done that with some funds before, but I don't really recommend that because I like having that there as I'll give you an example. I have no emergency fund. You know why?
Because I have $90,000
in my 457.
You make me feel better about myself. I don't have an emergency fund, and I go back and forth between thinking that I'm being irresponsible, and then you don't have one, but you have another plan. We were talking to Frugal Woods. They don't use an emergency fund because they live so far beneath their means. They have options when something does go awry. I think it's interesting.
I never thought of it like this, but I guess a 457, you could view it as an emergency fund that is funded pre-tax.
Oh, wow.
But when you're funding it, everybody says, 12 or 18 months of expenses, and you're saving that after tax? How long is that going to take?
Brad, is this challenging you a little bit with what to do with your emergency fund?
Yeah, I mean, I'm over-invested in cash, unfortunately. We're a little, I don't know what our problem is, but we realize that it should all be in the market, obviously. And, even what you were talking about before about front loading, to your point about it doesn't have to be perfect. I think that's a crucial point for everybody listening to this is you should glean what you can from conversations like this. Ed is just rocking it. I mean, this is truly amazing. I'm in awe just listening. But you can do, if you're at 0% of what he's doing right now, if you do 20%, 50%, 70%, that is going to put you in such a positive position. It might not be the perfectly optimized version, but man, you can take what you can from this. And for me, full disclosure, like we have an issue psychologically with front loading. Even though, I've read the Mad Fientist article about it, just like I'm sure you have, and the math makes sense. I know that it does, but I still have this mental hang up about, my income's going to go away someday. As ridiculous as this is, I had this conversation with my wife, Laura, yesterday, which is, hey, since it's the beginning of the year, we're recording this in February 2017, I actually put my 401k, my employee deferral down to 0. Now that's crazy according to front loading. That's crazy according to math. But psychologically for me, it's let me make sure my businesses are doing okay in 2017 And then in, let's say, June or July, I'll put it back up to 100%. And however long it takes me to fund that 18K, a month, 2 months, 3 months, whatever it may be, then I'll do it then. But again, I know that's crazy, but that works psychologically for me. Whereas the right answer is to do what you do. But I think that's kind of a cool perspective for people listening, is you have to do what works for yourself. So there's no perfect answer.
Yeah, and full disclosure on my end, I was doing an article on my facts series on how do you invest your money. And so I got the personal capital charts out, and I see my allocation. I'm sitting on 29% cash. That is not where I want to be. And part of that is some of that money's in that 457 that I'm going to pull from in the future. Part of that is my 72T distributions. I've got those waiting for me in money position. And then I have that money from 403Bs that I'm rolling over still. It's coming from a platform that's very expensive. So I have to park it in cash till I get it to Vanguard. So yeah, it was kind of tearing me up. I'm like, wow, some investor you are, 29% in cash. Sorry, I can't be perfect.
No,
yeah,
I think
you
you're
don't
doing
have
okay.
to be. You're doing amazingly well. So
we'll try to cover for your flaws. One of the things I did, I tried to go through your blog when I was prepping for this interview, and I was looking at a few different things, and I noticed a comment which I'm just going to read because I think it's useful. I think it probably reflects what a lot of our audience is thinking right now. And this person commented on your blog and said, my husband and I have been talking about doing this very same thing, but I'm confused. We're teachers, we're in year 9, and we don't take home but about $37,000 each year. How in the world did you save so much? And I think you had some comments. I don't know if maybe you wanted to just jump off on that.
Anyone's ever read The Millionaire Next Door? And Dr. Stanley talked about playing offense and playing defense. Playing defense is being frugal, smart with your money, right? Playing offense is learning how to generate income. And fortunately, Georgia is a pretty good state to teach in now because the salary's, I don't want to say good, but it's decent. But when you look at a salary scale in Georgia, you notice pretty quickly that if you get your next degree, say a master's, and then a specialist degree, and then your next one would be a PhD, for all those leaps, you get $6,000 pay increases. Well, my wife and I started with master's degrees, so we were already at the master's level, and we both did a specialist degree together. So we basically studied our way to another $12,000 a year between us. That's every year. It's not a one-time raise. So that was one of the ways we played offense, in a sense. When I was at LaGrange, I did all 7 years. I did what's called extended day. I did not have a planning period. That got me a 25% raise also on top of my base.
One question on those degrees: don't you have to pay $50,000 though to take out $50,000 in student loan debt to get those degrees?
That's what they'll tell you, right? They don't care if your degree's from Harvard or Karachi State. It doesn't matter if you have an EDS degree that is credited. And so I went to a state school here in Georgia, and I think I paid $6,000 for my degree. And I just would kind of piecemeal it and pay as I took the course. I didn't take out a student loan or anything for it. So yeah, the $6,000 investment got me $6,000 a year.
Wow.
And the same for my
good
wife.
deal.
Yeah, so
which again, because these are going in pre-tax buckets, is a pure $6,000 a year. It's not $4,000. It's not $3,000. It's all going
that's
on
a
your
good
side
point.
of the ledger.
Yeah, because I always tell people, if you're going to study your way or work your way to this pay increase, you got to save it. That doesn't mean you get to go have extra drinks on Friday and Saturday night. No, I mean, because you could, let's face it, we could piss all the money away. All of us could, it's just the way we are as humans. And like I said, in addition to that, I did extended day and got 25% more a year as a coach. So I was getting supplements, coaching supplements, and they weren't a lot, but let's say I made $3,000 in coaching supplements doing basketball and cross country. They were going in my accounts. I was never seeing those post-tax. And my wife sponsored clubs. So we would save all that money. And I think the most we ever made between us was $132,000.
Okay.
Sounds about right.
Now, how intentional was all of that? Was it we can put away $72,000 between the two of us in the 403B and the 457s? I actually kind of want to hear the math of, I think you said you saved 106 one year. Like, is that HSAs and IRAs? There's additional pre-tax buckets, right? Did you guys sit down and say, okay, if I work the extended day and I get the 25% raise and I do teach basketball and cross country, it's X thousands additional. Like, was it that intentional or did it evolve organically?
When we were in LaGrange, Georgia, it wasn't quite that intentional. We were doing all that work and we were maxing out all the accounts we could, but we never really sat down and said, oh, this will fund this and this will fund that. But as the plan kind of evolved. I'll give you an example. This last job, 2015, I turned 50, right? So I'm past 50, and I knew I could get 24,000 because 18,000 plus the 6 catch-up amount. I could do that for the 403B and the 457. So that's times 2, right? I'm going to get math nerdy with you, Brad.
I like it. Keep it coming.
You're going to regret prompting me on this.
Hey, he's a CPA. He's getting very, very excited over here.
I'm thrilled.
I'm leaning back in the chair just to take a couple minutes off.
Okay. And then I could also do my IRA with the catch-up provision, which was another 1,000. So that's a total of 6,500. So I'm doing this right here on a piece of paper as I talk to you guys.
54.5,
right,
I think.
Right there, I could do 54,500, just me. Okay? And I did that. My wife, she wasn't 50 yet. She is now. She could do 18 in both of her accounts, the 457 and 403B. That's 36,000 plus her 5,500. So we're looking at, what is that, 41,500 she can do. Well, together, we're looking at, that's $96,000. Wow. Yeah, and that's what we did. But wait, there's more. There's the HSA, which I believe was 6,650. All right.
Yeah,
and so that's we're at, what is that? We're at 102,000 and change. And I did the Ed Savings account, 2,000 more. And I had some 529 plans. So yeah, as I kind of became more aware of this, we would just sit down and basically the math we would do is we'd put all our accounts down and put the max for all of them and add them up. And that's the goal. It's that simple. Those are going to be met. And let me mention this a little bit. I guess this is kind of like the people that are really big into systems and Uber optimization. I don't have a problem doing what I'm going to explain here. I just got my W-2s. And like I told you guys, I had $2 in income from my paychecks, but when I got my W-2s, between us, we still had like $6,700. Okay, well, that money kind of blows up my tax plan a little bit. It pushes me $6,000 beyond where I wanted to be. Well, being that I'm sitting on a good cash position right now, I have no problem taking that money that I have now and making that 2016 W-2 money disappear by using an IRA now. Now, some people would argue, well, you're recycling. And yeah, I see their point. But my thing is, I'm always trying to fill my buckets while also keeping my tax efficiency. Does that make sense?
I love the game that you've created. I mean, clearly, it's so different. Of all the people that I've met in my entire 30-something years now, I've never met anybody that goes into tax planning on a personal level that does it like this. And so I have a feeling everybody that's listening to this podcast and will listen to this podcast, this is going to change their world. Now, whether or not they decide to actually do it or not, that's a completely different thing. But just the way of looking at this is so mind-blowing and awesome. Very, very cool.
And if I could just jump in with one more thing, it seems as if, to me, there's a structural advantage for public employees with that 457. I don't want to keep harping on that, but that is the coolest thing I've ever heard in this kind of planning, where you can pull that money out without penalty. So for me, it's always been, and this was before I read a lot of the personal finance articles, the Roth IRA ladder from the Mad Scientists, which was exactly what I thought of when you mentioned that you can pull out of 457s. But for me, it's always been, I'm putting all this money away, tax deferred, but I can't touch it until I'm 59 and a half. And obviously we know, 72T, and there are ways to get it out, but it's somewhat convoluted. Whereas with the 457, you just pull it out whenever you want. I mean, that is such a game changer to me. Whereas many public employees say, oh, I can't get wealthy on a public employee salary. You guys have these structural advantages that I wish I had.
And you are a millionaire now. So you are now the millionaire, millionaire educator.
We're a millionaire household. Yeah, that's my next goal. Is I want just me to be a millionaire.
Oh, you're so selfish.
I know. You didn't read. You need to read my post, my trillionaire plan.
Oh, I did. Very cool. Yeah. I'm rooting for you. I think you can do it. Just give yourself another 60 years. You'll be just fine.
I'm going to live to 200, and everyone's going to have to eat it.
Nice.
Okay.
Well, Ed, I have absolutely loved what you've put together here. I have so many friends that I want to hear this specific podcast because I believe this information can be so valuable for them. Like I said, at least 10 of my friends are state employees. At least 5 of those are firefighters. I have 5 friends that are teachers. I probably have some more that are in like the sheriff's department, that sort of thing. But I want every single one of my friends to retire a millionaire. And I think that it's totally doable. And I think that you are someone that they should be able to relate to. Would you say that there's anything that you've done that is not something that can be replicated?
No.
Yeah.
And on top of that, I've made a trillion mistakes.
Okay. All right. And yeah, potentially they're even maybe starting before you really got started. So
Yes.
I'm going to try to share this with them. I really think there's some potential there. But now I'm very excited to introduce you to the hot seat.
Ow.
All right. Wait for it.
In a world overrun by greedy corporations and an overreaching government, 5 questions highlight the secrets of those that have broken free. Welcome to the Choose FI Hot Seat.
All right. So Ed, our first question for you on the hot seat, and these are very dangerous questions. Number 1, your favorite blog that's not your own.
Root of Good and Go Curry Cracker. I would say because of tax optimization, and I'm a little nerd, I guess, and their awesome low-cost lifestyle.
Awesome. Very cool. I love it when people come up with blogs that I haven't read a lot of because it kind of gives me a new place to start. If everybody just said the same one, probably get a little bit repetitive.
Those two, you'll love them. They put their tax returns out there, and you can see what they've done, so you can pick through their minds.
Go Curry Cracker I have read. Root of Good I have not read. What is his focus?
Well, he retired at 33, I believe, and he was a state employee in North Carolina. He has a family of 3 kids and a wife, and he lives an awesome existence, roughly on, I don't know, $45,000 a year. Okay. And he's a millionaire also. He's getting close to 2 million.
Almost 2, yeah. He publishes his net worth.
All right, number 2, favorite article of all time.
That's an easy one for me. It's Root of Good. That's Justin McCurry's article on $150,000 of income, $150 of income tax.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, 0.01% income tax, I believe, or whatever it works out to be.
Holy crap.
Yeah, you talk about tax optimization. I thought I was doing great, and I read that, and I felt like a loser.
We will link to that in the show notes. I've never read that article. I'm very excited to read it.
It's classic. You'll love it.
All right, number 3, your favorite life hack.
I've just kind of got an overall approach on this. Frugal living. Once you learn how to live frugally and kind of optimize your life, it's like doubling your money. It's like getting a raise.
It really is. And you have done it. I mean, you are the extreme example. And honestly, totally something that everybody should be thinking of and doing. But it is so cool what you're doing. I love how you've packaged it. And that is a huge life hack. Pre-tax buckets. Number 4, your biggest financial mistake.
Well, there have been a lot, but I think I missed a golden opportunity in 2002. I should have started using my 457 immediately. I was sitting on a $100,000 position, and I had a rent of $650. I should have just been loading up all the accounts from day one, but had no example to follow, so I missed that 7 years of incredible savings.
It's all about having that example, having someone else model it for you. That's what I hope that we're communicating to our audience with this podcast, is giving you people that have modeled it, that are someone that you can relate to. It's not a guru. It's not someone that's out there and essentially kind of like a Tim Ferriss. And you're like, man, he's really cool, but he has nothing in common with me. He's totally out there. What I love is finding someone that I can identify with. I can see their decision tree, and that totally makes sense. I could do that.
Yeah, you don't have to be a genius to do that.
All right. Number 5, the advice you would give your younger self.
I would tell my younger self, save it all. I'm a big believer in hardcore savings. That will speed you on the path to wealth more than your investment knowledge, more than your frugal living. When you're putting stuff to your side of the ledger, your wealth grows. And I would have just told myself, load up on all your accounts. Load them up. You'll figure it out later.
Yeah, that's brilliant advice.
The traditional advice is what, 10 to 15%?
Yeah, if you're being aggressive.
Yeah, and that puts you on a path of what, 70 years?
40-year
60
career,
years?
yeah.
Something crazy, the heck with that, you'll pay taxes for 40 years. They can charge your account for 40 years with fees. No, do 100% and retire in 7 to 10 years.
I love it. 100%
so cool.
Savings rate. Yes, absolutely. All right. So Ed, how can people connect with you at Millionaire Educator? What would be the best way that someone could really just throw themselves into your content?
Well, my website is millionaireeducator.com. And I also am on Twitter, and I just kind of forward a few articles that through there occasionally. And I do have a little Facebook presence. Don't do much with it, but that way you can at least see my articles in your feed. And that's, like I said, millionaireeducator.com.
So much valuable information here. It really is hard to even figure out where to begin and end with it. But I hope you got something out of this. I hope that if you are in one of these categories, these state employees, so the teachers, the firefighters, the police officers, I hope you latched onto this fact that there are tools in place for you already that almost give you an unfair advantage at crushing this game of financial independence. Go today. Go find out whether or not you have access to the 457. Go dig into Ed's content over at Millionaire Educator and come up with your own FI plan that will allow you to absolutely crush this game and supercharge your path to FI. I hope you enjoyed this episode, my friends, and we'll see you next time as we continue to go down the road less traveled.
You've been listening to Choose FI Radio Podcast, where we help middle-class America build wealth, one life hack at a time.